Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar on AI-driven research projects for hospitals, how to face them. AI is one topic that it's on the newspapers like every day. AI is not one technology, it's a group of technologies. And obviously it's been a priority, or it's something that as I said, increasingly prevalent in business, society, but also in healthcare. So today we are going to discuss with healthcare organizations and technology companies how we can facilitate, or which are the challenges that they are facing when implementing AI in the projects in the hospitals. So this webinar is in the framework of AICCELERATE. AICCELERATE is a EU-funded project, and what we have been doing is working in 5 pilots in order to demonstrate the scalability of the AI solutions. Today, we count with Professor Alberto. He's the head of Predictive and Preventive Medicine Research at Ospedale Pediatrico Bambino Gesù in Rome. With Timo, he's the head of testing and innovation units in the Oulu University Hospital. With Arnau, he's an innovation engineer and project manager at the Hospital Sant Joan, and Giampaolo, he's a project manager at Laboratories Europe. They've been working for the last 3 years in this project, and I'm sure they are going to be able to provide a lot of insights. As I said, AI can be used in healthcare to diagnose diseases, to develop personalized plans, to assist clinicians with their decision-making. But there are a lot of questions open on how to really implement AI in hospitals. And there's a lot of challenges related, for example, to data privacy, bias, but also which are the skills that professionals need to have or need to achieve in order to be able to manage or to work with artificial intelligence. So Arnau, in your experience, which are the main challenges, just to start this discussion, which are the main challenges that are faced in the development of AI projects in a clinical framework in hospitals?
Thank you, Miriam, and good morning, everyone. Very happy to be here and give our view on that. So the main challenges I see is that AI, it's quite a new technology, and most of the hospitals for the last 20 years have been focused mainly on gathering data in the EHR systems for an exploitation and gathering as a support for the assistential provision of clinical services, but not for the secondary use. And that means that big investments and resources have been put and set to develop all the infrastructure to gather all this data and facilitate the work, but not for having the secondary use. That's something that it's coming. We are hospitals more and more prepared, but still that's a challenge. So streamlining and having a process established with the people that have the knowledge to help prepare the data, extract the data, and start co-developments with industry in other universities in AI, which is mainly based on the exploitation of data. I think it's one of the main challenges. Also, not having still clearly put to ground and into the processes of the hospital the regulatory and legal frameworks for the exploitation of data in this new regulation at the European level for the use of data as a secondary use, of course. At the end, those would be the main challenges. Finally, also the need for this multidisciplinarity in the process of developing AI projects and making clinicians and researchers and the institution understand the potential and understand the type of questions and solutions and opportunities that AI could bring. So streamlined processes, capacity for the secondary use of data, and finally the human resources and acknowledge to be able to develop this kind of projects, I would say.
Thank you very much, Arnau. So Considering the challenges that you have here mentioned, Alberto, what do you think that is more important, to have the right technologies or to have the right organization and the right team?
Very good question, because everyone, when we speak and we discuss about AI applications, think about technology. We need big computers, big data, big resources, and nobody or almost few people think about the organization and the people that will have access to the data, will deal with the management of the application, and will work together. And this is one of the lessons that we learned in this project in AICCELERATE. You know, for me, there's a paradigm shift between you know, the previous period in which we applied traditional methods for traditional research, scientific research, which is very well structured. We have protocols. We know that we have to design an experiment or a study. Then we get the data and we make the analysis. Dealing with AI is much more complex, and we need to think to other stakeholders from the very beginning. And since we were not prepared to actually, we were not used yet to develop projects that were completely based on AI, we realized that, well, the activity made with the ethical committee, with the data protection officer, with the data scientists, with the IT people should be made from the very beginning. Now, this made also us discuss about the organization of a hospital, of a research hospital, if we have to invest in the future for developing AI products or even implementing external AI products. And the idea is that we need the right people at the right time, in the right place, as usual, but again, from the very beginning of this project. So, for example, we think of AI products, and we usually think about the protocol to be submitted to an ethical committee to be one of the formalities that is business as usual. Because you write down a protocol, you know very well how to manage the data and deal with patients and so on. For AI projects, there are several other dimensions that should be discussed. And this discussion includes also different professionals. So not only clinicians, but also IT people, how the data will be managed, data scientists, how the data will be extracted, analyzed, and prepared before feeding an algorithm. Data protection officer, because actually privacy is one of the most important concerns that they have. And again, possibly one of the barriers for developing AI projects, and legal also personals, because, you know, all these dimensions are absolutely included in AI applications, even in their development. So I think that if we think of preparing a hospital, a research hospital for the future, for the development and for implementation of AI applications, we need to think at the same time about the infrastructure, which is technology, and the internal organization. I don't have a unique solution that might fit all the settings, but actually it's extremely important that we think from the very beginning about the involvement of different stakeholders, because only speaking together, we can find solutions that streamline the projects and the activities. Otherwise, we run back and forth from different persons and different stakeholders, and we never start with the right velocity, and the risk is running late. That's more or less the lessons that we learned.
Yeah. Well, Alberto, you mentioned a lot of rights. You need to have the right people, the right technology. So Arnau, how well do you think that the hospitals are prepared for the implementation of AI projects or AI solutions?
Thank you, Miriam. Of course, that question depends a lot on the hospital and the investment and the C-level vision on the importance of those kind of resources that Alberto were mentioning before to be put in place. But I think that thanks to projects like AICCELERATE and the collaboration in between institutions like we've been doing in this project, the hospitals are advancing quite a bit in establishing this kind of resources. So ethical committees are being more acknowledged and more educated in terms of what's needed in terms of AI developments and research. DPOs, most of the hospitals already must have a DPO. So this figure appears and is in the hospitals. And in most of the cases, at least in the hospitals that collaborated in the consortium of AICCELERATE, we are setting also the technical environments needed for the secondary exploitation of data. So data lakes are appearing as and consolidating as a way of having data available and prepared to then be exploited for research. And that's not a simple process. In fact, all the curation of data, it's one of the parts that takes more time, much more than what could be expected from a beginning, and needs a specific personnel and acknowledge to be able to work with the clinical part, with the technical part, the legal part, to understand all the nuances and variables and data to be used and exploited. Another need that is there is in that I think it's important to know is that there's many different transactional systems put in place. So just in Catalonia, for instance, we have 27 different EHR systems in the hospitals that we have in the region. Imagine at a European level. So when we want to do a research project based on data for the development of AI, bringing data from hospitals around Europe, the challenge is big. And I think part of the resources that the hospitals are dedicating nowadays on trying to be prepared and be ready is mainly on that, on having a team that can systematically understand how the data is needed, and that helps with also the external partners and the legal and ethical committees to prepare all this data, not only for the secondary use internally, but also with the standards that then can be shared with the other institutions. Another thing that we've seen is how do you exploit this data, right? So you have the data lake, you have the personnel for the data protection, the ethical committee understands what is needed, you develop the processes, but then you need to exploit this data. And another thing that is coming, and some hospitals already have, it's having a system for showing the results and putting those algorithms and those scores into production. For instance, in our hospital, we have a command center, which is, we call it Cortex, which is a center in which we have all this personnel together, and a tower of control, let's say, like if it was an airport, in which you can show the different dashboards and solutions developed that can be, after a certain control and validation, put into production, and that will help then productivize and get an impact into the processes of the hospital, looking at different things like the ones we've been developed in the project, like how are your patients in a certain area, like it could be cardio or palliative care. What would be the prediction of risk of deterioration of those patients, etc. So I think there's many challenges, but hospitals are working to set up their resources and try to understand the regulations and the legal framework, which is huge and complex, and facilitate the acceleration of developments in this new technology that I'm sure will bring great impact on healthcare.
Yeah, thank you, Arnau. So the technology is important, but what I understand from your words, it is that having a clear strategy behind the hospital on what I want to do with this AI solution, it's also in order to embed those solutions with the existing systems. It is really relevant. And also when working with some other in this EU project with some other countries, you need to consider that the data is not organized in the same way. But you have also mentioned something that Alberto already came across, that is the interdisciplinarity. Is that really a key EU issue to advancing AI in healthcare, Alberto?
Well, I'm old enough to remember that when I was young, everybody was obsessed about the specialization, you know, vertical things, everybody thinking to a small piece of knowledge and very specialized on that. With the years and the experience, it was evident that interdisciplinarity is much more powerful. And I've been lucky enough to be in contact and working with different professionals, from physicists, chemistry experts, ethical experts, and other people. And this brings fresh air to the things that usually circle continuously in always the same person. So first thing, interdisciplinarity is extremely important for novelty and innovation. Second, you can't pretend that you know everything. So having different point of views is extremely important. And three, actually, you're not in competition when you stay with other people in different areas. You work for the same objective, and it's easier to work together because, you know, when you have two specialists competing maybe on the same area, the same knowledge, might be hard sometimes. This is not a case when you work with other people in other domains. But, you know, there's one small problem. For working with other disciplines and other experts in other domains requires listening very much and adapting your language to other domains. Arnau is an engineer, I'm a medical doctor. If we try to speak together about projects, we are expert enough to understand with each other. But if you put in engineers or clinicians never having this kind of exchange, they don't understand each other. And this is very important because the exercise is trying to understand what the other person is trying to communicate using a common language, maybe sometimes even ChatGPT, which might be one of the solutions, but using the same table and the same field for achieving the same objectives. It's fun because actually you realize once you start doing that, that this is much more powerful than trying to focus on a small objective that might be not the results expected for a big project like the ones we are involved in.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this on the table, because obviously sometimes or quite often the solutions have not developed internally in the healthcare organizations, but they are done in collaboration or working together with external companies, and this lack of understanding sometimes in between what the professional needs or what they want or what they are able to provide with the companies, it's always one of the biggest challenges. So Giampaolo, do you think that federated learning is the only possible solution to allow efficient multicentric AI-based modeling in the future? So, I mean, how do you see that from the point of view of a company?
Well, I think that's definitely one solution, one powerful solution, because if you think about that, with federated learning, you are able technically to train your AI model, obtain the weights, so some like anonymous data, something which does not infringe any privacy related regulation, and then you can move this model and fine-tune it on another center. So this is a solution, it's very powerful. However, there are strong limitations, and this is really connected to what Arnau was saying previously. So there are so many different standards, so many different way of representing the data inside the hospital. So if we want, for example, to go for a federated learning approach, we need to have a lower level of harmonization, which is actually something that I think AICCELERATE managed to do pretty well, because we have the extraction suite that allow to take data from the different centers, even though it was in a sense in silos for this specific project, but we show that we can harmonize things. And I think this is the first layer needed for a federated learning approach. Then you also have other powerful tools. I'm thinking about the approach about synthetic data generation, and this is something that needs to be investigated for sure also in the future.
Yeah, data is another of the key issues to be discussed when we talk about AI. It's like I think when we talk about AI, data is like the very first challenge, how to access to data. So as I understood, Timo, in Finland, all the patient data has been stored in electronic format for years. Is it easier for you, or is it an advantage for you in order to move into AI solutions?
Thank you, Miriam. And yes, indeed, data itself is a starting point for development to some extent. And we do have a huge amount of data available. However, it's not evident that all the data is in suitable format for development. Like in AICCELERATE project, we made a mapping of different source systems inside only Oulu University Hospital, and there is more than 100 different systems that are providing data for algorithm development and to be utilized in the development. But like in AI development, if you put garbage in, you get garbage out. So you should put some focus in refining the data and ensuring that of high quality. And many hospitals still in Europe, they don't have these ready reporting databases that would enable this data to be available straight away. But it requires this pre-processing, and it requires those right personnel, like data scientists, data analysts, to do the work. Okay. And in AICCELERATE project, eventually we were able to get huge amount of data from Oulu, for example, from surgical operations. We got the data set of 3 years containing more than 100 units of data. So that is a gold mine for algorithm development eventually, but it doesn't happen automatically.
Yeah. So I guess that for you, AICCELERATE has been like a key, say, stepping stone in order to understand how to handle or how to work with all that amount of data.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And especially how to get all the permissions in place to be able to utilize the data.
But as I understand, one of the biggest challenges, it is not having the data, but it's the privacy preservation of the data. It's like all these anonymized data. So Alberto, how do you think that this has an impact on the development of AI solutions in healthcare?
You know that if you speak with clinicians involved in clinical research, they hate data protection officers all the time because it seems like they are putting all the possible barriers to data access. I must say one thing. It's good that we have our data protection officer at the next door, so we can discuss very frequently. So privacy preservation is extremely important. For example, we are working in pediatrics in this project and in our hospitals. And privacy preservation is even more important in children because they are vulnerable, they are exposed to a number of problems that may arise for a misuse of their data, including the data coming from the electronic health records or regarding their health. So preserving privacy is extremely important. So how to overcome the problems that we have for using them? Because if we don't apply the proper selection of data, we risk to introduce a lot of bias in the algorithms and in the AI tools that we want to apply to the general population. Think about, for example, some severe diseases as cancer. Let's say that we need an informed consent from all children, including those dying from cancer. But it's extremely difficult to get an informed consent from families of a child who died of cancer. They don't want to speak about that. In this case, we will exclude the data of this kind of children, of the children that died of cancer, from the training of our algorithm, which will introduce a significant bias. That's more or less the story that we are trying to discuss. So data protection officers realize that there are two sides of the coin, because on one side we have to preserve privacy, but on the other side we should also avoid to introduce bias. And we have to discuss to find out the right solution. I don't think we have one yet. There's some technologies in place that may be helpful. Federated learning is one, but as Giampaolo was saying, this is not magic, it's not perfect, and there are a lot of problems before thinking to how to share the models. Now, another couple of observations. One is that families and patients are always very helpful. It's not a real problem having their informed consent. They would be even in favor of using their data for not only for the main purpose, you know that informed consent is requested for a specific study. They would be happy leaving the clinical researchers using their data also for other purposes. But this is a risk, and that's why we have to discuss with data protection officer to find out the right solution. I also have to say that the interpretation of GDPR, which is one of the main things, is very different from country to country, from side to side. For example, we're champions in the severity of application of GDPR, and the first response is always no, this can't be done. I understand that other countries and other settings are more liberal and more open to the secondary use of this data. So I think that we are just at the beginning of a story, and we should make our best to develop some technologies that is not only computer algorithms and other things, but also thinking about the ethic dimension, the privacy preservation, again, together with other professionals. So solutions must be developed by groups with different backgrounds, not only privacy professionals, but also clinicians, also IT people, engineers, data scientists, all together. And I also think this is a good time because we are at the beginning of the opening of the European health data space, which is apparently a perfect opportunity. Everybody talks about data sharing in this space, but nobody has explained yet how. So I think we're just beginning a story, and we are the main characters because we're working on a project dealing exactly with these challenges. So we must have the other people listen our voice because we have some experience and try to work together for a common solution that I can't imagine yet as in simple words because it does not exist yet.
Yeah, well, you were mentioning before that now most of the hospitals have a DPO, but I guess the job description of a DPO has changed a lot since AI really arrived quite strongly into healthcare. And here is when back to the interdisciplinarity that we were discussing at the very first at the beginning of the webinar. It is really a must. I mean, it is not only DPO; it's like interacting with all the other areas in order to better understand what this entails. I mean, what working with AI entails in terms of data privacy. So
we are friends now.
Yeah.
We discuss and we are friends, so we don't fight anymore.
You are next door, so that's that's an asset. Okay, so this is from the point of view of the hospitals, but when it comes to external organizations working with medical data, Giampaolo, what is the biggest challenge that you face?
Well, there are multiples, and like given how this discussion put a lot of seeds on different topics. So first, as I think that the major, like the biggest problem will be data quality, first of all. So with very poor quality data, you cannot get good models. So this, I think, is number one problem. But luckily, like all the hospital, and we saw that with OPBG, with also with Sant Joan, like there have been a lot of care put into like ensuring the quality of the data, and this for sure helped. Still, there is the problem, obviously, of the GDPR, as we discussed, but this affects mostly the timing about having the consensus to start processing the data, also looking at the data, because looking at the data is already processing. That's what our TPO keeps telling us. So it's a long process, and you need to be ready and ensure that you can do what you want to do. I think that the third one is it's related to the quality of data, but in general, having tons of missing information may be something that you have to find solution to tackle this problem. And yeah, this, if you manage in a sense to look at this problem, find solution, then you're already at a good starting point.
So it is not only that we need data, we need quality data in order to, well, of course, I mean, it makes sense, but what I mean is, it is not about the quantity, but as Timo mentioned before, the quality of the data that you are accessing and how compatible, let's say, it is the data. So Timo, what do you think that should be considered in order to avoid pitfalls in the development of the algorithms of the AI solutions?
I'm quite well in line with the previous Giampaolo and Alberto here. So to ensure that the data availability and ensure the resourcing required to have the data access to data collection and also the data processing. So this must be ensured. Put some effort into this before starting the project. In international collaboration context, you have to ensure that there is a capability to draft and finalize the required agreements. Like in AICCELERATE, we struggled a lot with the data processing agreements. Eventually, we got those in place, and now we know how to do those in the next cases. And in EU level, the regulations like GDPR and national legislations, they are something that we just have to follow. And Alberto mentioned that you are quite strict with the legal perspectives in Italy. That's same in Finland. Like the law on secondary use of data, it's one of the strictest in EU in Finland. But I must say that when someone is starting AI development project, so you might want to listen to us, because we have been doing this skiing in the deep snow. We have made the first tracks in the deep snow, and for followers, it will be much easier to follow on the same tracks.
Thank you. Good example. So, Giampaolo, do you think that from your experience, is there any way that information or data coming from the different sources can be used in a different way? Is there any recipe that you can give on how to use that in an efficient way?
Well, not a specific recipe, but I strongly believe that all the information which are present in the electronic databases are complementary. So each information can, in specific modality, a specific like lab test, for sure can be augmented when paired with another data, which can be a medical note or an image in which is segmented something specific. So I think that the power of this knowledge that lies in the medical data lies exactly in that, in this multimodality approach. And only when you fully exploit this, you are able to improve the treatment, the care of the patient. So it's something that I think must be pursued continuously. It's already going on. We try to do that in AICCELERATE, but it's necessary. And this leads obviously to all the other problems we discussed before, data harmonization, not inter-patient, but intra-patient. So like it's in a sense a long way, but it for sure will bring to success in the future. I'm sure about that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that so regarding data, it is not only important the quality, but it's also how you manage. And I like this word that you use, this multimodality approach. Like we need to know how to deal with this data coming from different sources. Nevertheless, apart from data, I would like to move into another topic that always is a big challenge in the implementation of AI, especially in healthcare, and it's all the regulations and rules and certifications. So, Timo, what do you think about all the rules that are related to AI development in Europe?
Yeah,
And
it's
especially, and I'm
yeah.
going to complete my question, is not only in Europe, if you compare that to the ones that are now applied in the US or China.
Yeah, I just read a good comparison by Laila Danielsen, who is Norwegian, and she's an ex-pro football player. And nowadays she's a CEO of a Silicon Valley-based AI development company. So she presented that like US, they are the leader of AI development at the moment. If we compare the football, they have 11 players on the field with top skills. They have great coach, excellent support organization, and with their incredible skills, they are the best dominating team in the field. But if we compare this to China, they have actually 22 players on the field. But their coaching and support, it's not still on the quite same level than in US. But if there are 22 players against 11 players in the football, so you might succeed. But if we compare these to EU, so we have actually 3 players on the field, but we have 11 referees. So that's our game at the moment. These referees tell what we can do. And in addition, compared to US or China, European market is quite fragmented due to national borders, but also different languages that we have. Nowadays, these, for example, language models are quite capable of acting in the local languages, but that's not the easy field to play.
I was going to ask that especially AI is being used to overcome this language barrier sometimes. So that could be, if we manage that in the right way, we could overcome this language barrier, but not all this regulatory world that we have right now in the EU. So I think that is an important point that we should take as a lesson learned. I'm not into football myself, but I like the comparison. So, Arnau, regarding the experience that you have had in the context of AICCELERATE, which are your main takeaways? I mean, it's like, which are the main insights that you have learned after these 3 years, and that you would recommend other healthcare organizations being involved in these kind of projects to consider? Like, what would have you done in a different way?
Great question. By the way, I love the idea that Timo mentioned very easily with this football team example. And the take homes, I would say mainly one of the most important is to not underestimate the time needed for the starting of the project. So before you really get to the data, you need a lot of time to prepare the data, to go through the data collection, the data quality preparation, to align also the institution and the different people inside the institution that needs to do the tasks to allow that the data and the data quality can be prepared and extracted. And I think the underestimation of time for that process, I think it's one of the first take homes. So start as early as you can to have these discussions and to prepare that. The second, it's quite on the same line, but more focused on the ethical and legal part. So it takes more time than what you could think at the beginning, mainly because we are tackling with new developments, new technologies, and per each case, the requirements and definitions of the ethical protocols and the legal framework that you have to build, it's different. It's not the same if you are tackling with rare disease with a very low prevalence than if you are tackling with diabetes type 2, in which there's a lot of patients. And also that implies that you need to have certain pseudonymization strategies differently from one to the other, because of course it's easier to identify or re-identify a group of patients that are smaller than the one that is bigger, and you have more cohort that is much bigger. So all those kind of questions arise during the process of going through the protocol, the ethical committee, and what would be the secondary use that you will do on the data, and which algorithm you will be developing, and to be sure that that is aligned also with the regulatory and legal framework that we have now in Europe. So the underestimation of time would be the first take home. The second, and I think it's been mentioned many times also in the conversation of today, it's the need for the multidisciplinarity and co-working from the very beginning. So setting up multidisciplinary teams from inside the hospital, from the clinical part, from the technical part, data science part, together also with the technical teams from the collaborators or the companies, to understand exactly what's the unmet need that you are trying to solve with the solution and the development that you want to develop. So what is the hypothesis that you want to test? What are the questions that you want to test exactly, and make all the parts understand and align on what's that outcome that you want to accomplish. The last one I would say would be to think on the processes and the impact of the implementation at the end of the project. If everything goes well, the validation is done and that's implemented in the hospital. So to think on the impact that this new development will have on the processes from the clinical side from day one. So at the end is a product that have to respond to an unmet need, as we said, and it's not just a research project with a tech objective and some results. So we want to generate products that can help on the assistance of patients.
Well, what would you have done in a different way? I mean, I guess that some of the takeaways you already did in the right way. So what would you have done completely different if you were back 3 years ago?
Probably starting, so part of the take homes go not because we've done it correctly, but learning from the things that we would have done differently. And let me explain. I would, during preparation phase of the project, probably try to align already better. So spend more time on trying to align all the institution so that when the project starts, everyone is aware of what it's needed and what resources need to be allocated. And the second would be from day -1, start preparing and aligning on the generation of the multidisciplinary team and preparation of the protocols and legal documentation. Because if not, it could take a long time if you do it sequentially and with the framework and timely of a research project. It could take too long to go first to the ethical committee, then to the legal, and then to the data transfer agreement. So probably those things should start in parallel from the very beginning if possible, so that you can then advance quicker on responding all the questions that will arise. I would change those two.
Yeah, so the preliminary phase is very relevant for the right implementation of the project, let's say, or the pilot. Okay.
And the first 6 months.
Arnau here. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Timo? I was going to ask you.
Yeah, it's no, that's the same learnings.
Okay. And Alberto, what about your experience? What would you have done in a different way?
Well, I think that not only involving from day -1 all the people involved in the process, but allocating more resources to the information technology resources, because we always think that IT is like a service, it's always ready, and then you discover that they have no resources left, and you need a lot of them, and this is one of the critical things. And this should be planned very carefully from the very beginning. Two is speaking with the data protection officer and understanding what's going on, what are the challenges, and what should be addressed from the very beginning to dedicate and focus on this topic, and spend enough time to develop some strategy. Because again, all the things that we have been discussing today should be planned very carefully at the very beginning. While we are traditionally used to have projects in which this kind of formalities are usually put at the end of the project, and this is wrong.
This is a question to, well, the four of you. Do you think that the hospital have got enough IT resources in order to tackle or address AI solutions? So do you think that the IT teams are big enough or understand what is needed for the deployment of these solutions?
I can take this question, because to me, depending on the meaning of IT, because I think that resources needed in a hospital that develops research on AI, you should have IT infrastructures, so computers, databases, and other things, but you should have also other professionals that are not very popular in clinical research, like data scientists, data engineers, data analysts, which is a little bit different from, experts in statistics and other things, because AI is all about data. If you don't have the right people to manage, to extract, and to curate data, it's extremely difficult. And remember that data coming from the clinic are not the same as you have in a clinical trial where everything is perfect. Data coming from the clinic, from a clinical routine, are very dirty. There are a lot of missing data. Quality is an issue. And well, we had to deal with that. One of the lucky things that happened in our hospital, for example, was that at the same time we were concluding the works for AICCELERATE, we had also another European project for applying a common data model to the same kind of data. So we now have, at the end, some data ready for use because they have a common standard. It may be pooled with other institutions working on the same topic. So all the things happen, not exactly when it's needed, but things happen, absolutely.
Yeah. So Giampaolo, from your perspective, when dealing with the healthcare domain, healthcare organization, how challenging it is for a technology developer company to work on those AI solutions? Is it the problem on the, as we mentioned at the very beginning, of a common understanding on the needs or what is needed, or from both sides? I mean, what the healthcare organization need and what you as a developer of the solution need?
I think it's more about the common understanding, so the initial alignment. I think this plays a very big role. And when the discussion starts in the right way and the developer talks directly with the clinician, there is a continuous feedback. I think this helps modeling the problem in the right way and provide the best solution. It may be that on our side, like on the IT side, we may know some limitation of the model, which the clinician may ignore at the beginning, and vice versa. It may be possible that we want to predict, so we say we can predict this, but then the clinician says, oh, it's totally irrelevant, totally not reflecting the real world scenario. So it's just about that. So only when you align at the beginning, you are able also to understand the specific set of features of data you need and the specific use case that you need to develop, and how to do that will come later. But this is always like this virtuous cycle that needs to be created.
Okay. So let's say if I wrap up like a planning, it's like the phase 1 or the phase 0. It's a must when coming to this kind of implementation.
Yes.
So it is needed not only the planning but also the alignment. It's like know what you have to do, but also to align all different resources, internal and external, and also make sure that you have enough resources in terms of people, but also in terms of let's say funding, and that you have enough data, or which is like the raw materials that you can still, or you can start working with. So yeah, I think we usually, when we implement projects, we go straight into the phase 1 and we forget the phase 0. And without that one, it's not that easy. It's not it can be a bumpy road. So I'm going to open the floor to the participants in case that they want to put any questions. I haven't seen any questions yet. No? Okay. Fine. So I have to thank you very much to you all. It's been a very nice conversation, and I think that we could really create like a list of insights on how to do it better. The next time we will be working on AI solutions that I hope is going to be really soon. And please check for the participants, check our website. We are recording this webinar and it will be available for everyone. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.